Trial Lawyers University, where the Titans come to train. Produced and powered by LawPods.
All right, well, we got Jesse Wilson here. And Jesse and I haven't really known each other long, but now we do. And so this is pretty cool stuff. Because Jesse, let me ask you. Jesse, how did you get into this world called trial consulting and writing books for trial lawyers?
I ask myself that all the time, and it still mystifies me, Dan. First of all, thanks for having me.
Well,
yeah. How I got into this is I couldn't have scripted it if I even tried. I grew up a theater guy in LA, born and raised. Pretty much everything I knew that I was really good at was the theater. And then I was an actor for many, many years, and I hit a wall. Clearly, that was not the road that I was supposed to go down. I became a teacher. And I was a really good actor. I studied intensely at Juilliard, and that was my classical background. But I found my calling as a teacher. And everything I thought I knew about theater and acting and performance and all that stuff, the theater really was put in check at a much deeper level when I began working with inmates and addicts. They often go hand in hand in prisons across Colorado. And that's what shifted my life, not just professionally, but personally, in the work that I began doing in the realm of human connection. I'm going pretty fast, but it wasn't long after working in prison, I always have to say as a guest, that the role shifted and I began working with lawyers, mainly with witnesses, but putting together cases and telling stories and working the legal arena. And it fit everything. I felt like I'd been in training my whole life to do this work, and it fit like a glove, more than I would have ever even imagined. And 15 years later, here we are.
Okay, well, how did it happen? How did you get your big break in the trial lawyer world?
I'm sure probably a lot of people have heard. I don't want to assume anything, but I'm going to assume that most people have heard about a weird, awesome dude named Mel Orchard. And Mel Orchard was putting together a brilliant lawyer and friend, was putting together a program for a voir dire conference. And I always joke I was like the My Cousin Vinny character, like voir dire. Like I didn't know what the hell that was. The guy that I was working with in prison happened to be friends with a woman named Kathy Osborne, who ran a legal conference called 360 Advocacy. Mel was spearheading this program, and they needed a theater communications guy. And then I said, I'll do it. Just please tell me I don't have to know anything about the law world. And they're like, yeah. And so I went up there, and that's where I met. And it was a much smaller group because it was the middle of a snowstorm in Aspen. So I think out of the horde of people who were supposed to be there, I think only 25 people showed up. Mel and a bunch of people I met through TLC and a lot of people who remain my great friends today were in that initial group. And from there, that really was the major door opener. I started getting invited to cases and just becoming more and more immersed within this world. And I said to my wife after a year, not only can I do this work, I really, really want to do this work. This is the next step. This is the bucket that I've been wanting to fill for a while. And then I took the leap and became a full-time jury trial consultant. And yeah, that was about 15 years ago.
Well, you do have a book published called From Victim to Victor with Trial Guides.
It's called Witness Preparation, How to Tell the Winning Story. Yeah.
My bad.
It's okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
That was a great...
It's the victim to victor approach, right?
That's right. That's the foundation. And that's what you asked me, how did this work come from? Well, the victim to victor foundation of the book, Witness Preparation, right here behind me here, came from the work, well, originated from my understanding of theater, but it really, the prison work became the foundational place, the origin, the wellspring of the victim to victor approach that I take with witnesses, even though I didn't call it that back then. That's where it came from.
When you say the work in prison, say more about that, because it's unclear for me.
Yeah, so when we talk about victim to victor, and I think maybe we should just clarify for a second what that means to maybe people who aren't warmed up to what that means. It's an approach that I take with every single witness that I work on. It doesn't matter the case, doesn't matter the client, med, mal, TBI, you name it, or occasionally the criminal case. When the lawyer makes a decision to tell the story of strength, hope, and joy despite the pain, you get a much more credible witness, and that ends up maximizing your damages at an even greater level. So we'll talk more about what that looks like. But the origin for this work, when I say in prison, so I was teaching a theater behind bars program for inmates with another brilliant guy named Dave Fine. And the focus of the program and the workshop that really took off just like wildfire was helping the men and women they worked with make a radical and powerful shift in their lives. I essentially helped them put on a play of their lives. And the play of their lives was about them being able to step into a much more powerful role. And that came about through the recognition that, how am I defining myself? Am I defining myself by my strength or by my pain, by my victim, but by my crimes, by the pain and the horror that I've inflicted upon other people and myself? Or am I defining myself by the strength of trying to not be that guy, not be that woman, not being dragged into the snake pit? And so that required them to make the shift and to redefine their role. That's where the work came from. And so we see the same thing, no different, in my opinion, than in working with the witness.
This work in trial consulting,
yeah.
How does this approach lend itself to helping trial lawyers, figure out, I guess, and, win their cases?
How important is it to tell the right story?
Very,
yeah.
I'm guessing. No, obviously it's very important. First you have to figure out what story it is.
You got to figure out what
right
story it is. I go the simpler. I try to take the easy, not harder way when it comes to figuring out what the story is about. For me, it always begins with the client. And if you can understand your client's story, then it becomes a lot easier to understand and to frame the defendant's story. The problem is that I see, fortunately less and less today, but I see it happen all the time, is that you're telling the wrong story. Tell me about your client. Well, the common response will be, oh man, they're just jacked up and she's got a TBI and she cannot move and she just can't do this and she can't do that and she can't. And her life will never be the same. And, what are you asking for? Well, I'm asking for millions of dollars. And good luck with that story. You just said the word can't about 50 million times. What if you reframe that and say, well, let me tell you about my client. She's got a TBI and her life has been turned upside down. But Jesse, let me tell you about how she's trying to live her best life. And then you give me 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 golden examples of what she's trying to do. And you've reframed your case entirely and you've maximized your damages. You want that $1 million? Tell me the try story. Tell me how somebody is trying to overcome their pain. And so the message to your jurors, only 100% of the time, Dan, whether you say these words or not, you're standing in front of your jurors and you say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is not her pain. Who she is the strength of trying to overcome her pain. And I cannot wait for you to meet her. Now that's a subtle but a radically different approach. That to me is where the right story begins. And from there, then you build.
See, from there, then you build.
Yeah.
As far as because I have these.
You put the case together. Yeah.
Right. And so you help people figure out the story of their case.
The right story. Don't tell the story you want to tell. Tell the story you have to tell.
And then you help them also present their story.
Yeah. Now let's get on your feet and put this thing together. And that's where we go into openings and the 3 acts of opening statement. And then we get into the presentation, the performance skills. This is where you and I are, where our worlds overlap each other.
The 3 acts of direct. What are those 3 acts of direct?
So the 3 acts of direct examination, I think before I tell you what they are, I'm sounding so lawyer. Before we get to this, let me talk about this. It's important to be able to talk about the second wing of the victim to victor approach, because it eludes a lot of people. When I say take the victim to victor approach, it's like the surface understanding of that is, okay, I get it, Jesse, just I get it. Don't make my client a whiner. Okay, can we freaking move on? Well, that's only one wing of the plane. The first wing of the plane is, make the decision, the directorial decision, and you, the lawyer, are a director. We say storyteller, you're the director. The directorial decision you want to make is, okay, I'm going to cast the witness in the right role as the victor. But the second wing of the plane, what happens to a one-wing plane? It doesn't fly very far. Boom, goes down fast. If you just have the victor story. The second wing of the plane is one of the most dangerous and scary words for lawyers as well as witnesses in the courtroom. It's a 3-letter word. It's my favorite one in the trial. And it's called joy. It's being able to tell the victor story with joy. And that is an emotion that, let's just keep the camera focused on the witness right now, is an emotion that is foreign to many, many witnesses. I'd say less than 1% understand that to show the victor story, it's supporting the story of hope, strength, and joy. And that gives you real credibility. Joy despite the pain. So let's go back to the 3 acts, because joy is so critical. And I spent a great deal of my time within maybe the first 10 minutes of my prep with witnesses, helping them understand how important that role is. In the 3 acts of direct examination for the witness, we start with stories of joy. Stories of joy, I got titles for everything. Act 1 is stories of joy. Act 2, embrace the suck. Act 3, the victor story. Those are the try stories of the client. When we go back to Act 1, I call it stories of joy because it answers the question immediately for the jurors. How can I, this juror, know the value of what's been taken if you don't show me the value? The value is joy. I also call Act 1 the bank deposit. Because when you deposit the joy, now what do you get to do? You get to withdraw the pain. And now that brings us into Act 2. But joy is just as important in Act 2 as it is in Act 1. And I'll give you an example of that. The only time that a witness can ever or should ever say or volunteer anything. We in depot prep and in trial, we said, don't ever guess, don't ever volunteer. You don't know, you only know what you know. The only time they can volunteer something also has to do with joy. They can volunteer, I call it embrace the suck, but get to the butt. That sounds a little graphic, so I apologize. Get to the butt. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. The witness says her husband had been killed in this terrible car crash. I couldn't get out of bed. I just could not bring myself to get out of bed after Harry died. I couldn't lift my head. I was just a hot mess. I could not get out of bed. But then one day I looked across the room and I saw a picture on the wall and I saw Harry's goofy smiling face, that stupid face that he made when I took that shot of him in Miami. And I looked at him and I smiled and I thought, I know, Harry, I know. Get out of bed, Dolores. And so I took the next step. You can volunteer that. That contains joy, that contains credibility, and it also allows me, the listener, to understand what has been taken from you at an even greater level. And then you get into Act 3, the victor story, the try stories, the bucket that you want to be able to fill with your witness. You want to fill up as many try stories. I know I said can't earlier in that example, but can't is the 4-letter C word that you never want your witness to say. Other people can say what they can't do. The witness can say, it's hard for me to, it's difficult for me to, it's a challenge. Whatever words they want to say, that's fine, but they can't say can't. So you back it up by try. And that's how you want to land your plane. You blow up the balloon with hope. What are they looking forward to in the future? Those kind of things. That would be all of your Act 3. But at Act 3 is primarily the try stories as you're moving out, trying to move out to the best of your ability out of that emotional snake pit that we saw in Act 2. And Act 2, of course, is where you embrace all of your landmine issues. All the things that the defense might ask you about, unless there's a very good strategic reason not to ask, you embrace the suck entirely in Act 2. So those are the 3 acts, Dan. Hopefully that made sense.
It did make sense. I've seen put on workshops for folks, and I know you were just down in Atlanta with my good buddy Lloyd Bell, who's
it was so
also
awesome.
come into
The mask
Vegas.
workshop. It was so cool.
So tell us about these workshops and these masks.
Yeah. The mask work is something that I have been teaching for a very long time. And I was introduced to working with the mask when I was a student at Juilliard. And the mask is a powerful instrument to find the emotional truth of a person in their body. It starts in the body. So I work with two kinds of masks, the neutral mask and then the character mask. And the neutral mask is a neutral mask. You can just eyes and nose. And the purpose of that mask is to be able to have you awaken your body, to use your storytelling instrument that many of us will intellectualize. You know, Josh Carton says we tell stories from the neck up. And the mask work allows you to literally embody that character. When I say the character, I mean the client. We start with character. People will typically come in with a stage character. And then that shifts into the client story. But the mask work primarily allows you to be able to remove the mask, not just of the witness, or your client, or the villain, whoever it is that you're needing to show us or connect their story to, but it starts with the client. But it also allows you to be able to remove your mask. And so the focus of the workshop that I did with Lloyd, was victim to victor, maximizing damages. And so it was being able to find the strength of the client and to find the best way that you can communicate that story of strength and hope and joy. And ultimately, the closing part of that, or the culminating part of the workshop, is a piece of a closing argument. Yeah.
And how long is that workshop? How long are your workshops typically?
They vary from a day to 3 days to sometimes a week, but typically it's a 1 day. It's a 1 day workshop. Yeah. 1 day or a half.
And
those 1 days or half days could be hosted by a lot of law firms will do that, or they'll come out to my neck of the woods and in this beautiful theater space that I work at in Colorado. So, yeah.
Great. And you're going to be teaching for the first time at Trial Lawyers University.
I'm looking forward to that.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Good. Me too, because we're about 90 days away. So,
yeah,
I'm in crunch mode over here, working my ass off to make things awesome for all the folks that show up.
I'm completely serious. I think you need to do a podcast on how you find your energy. It's impressive. I don't know how you do it. It's amazing. You're all over the place.
I don't have a choice. I was up until I tried to get to bed last night. I got to bed last night at like 1:30. I'm like, shit. I should have listened to Jesse and postponed this a little bit, but I didn't know I was going to be out and having such a, it's weird living in Vegas, because one of the reasons why I live here is because there's so many conferences in town, and this National Bar Association was never even on my radar. And then we were down in Huntington Beach, my last conference, and the president of the National Bar Association, his name's Calhoun, he was there, and he's like, hey, you should come to our event, blah, blah, blah. And, I want you to help us design some curriculum or something along those lines. So I'm like, all right. And so it's really weird being at an event and not knowing a lot of people. And it's not even plaintiffs lawyers, it's like business lawyers. And the other exhibitors are like the U.S. Army and the CIA and all these government jobs that are, and like and Amazon is an exhibitor at a lawyer's conference. I'm like, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, people are looking for jobs. I'm like, you are looking for people that are like the Walking Dead. I mean, I'm like, what do people do there? Like, oh, there's lots of a big legal department. I'm like, wow, sounds horrible. I'm like, you all lawyers? Like, yes. I'm like, wow, sounds horrible, but okay. And then last night, I met so many great people at this conference, and
great.
Ben Crump was hanging out a little bit, giving it, it was really great.
Your growing garden. That's awesome.
And now we had to get here.
Yeah.
Get up. I was like, almost like day one. I was like, I just got to put this off, because this is like 6:30 a.m. We started at my time on Pacific. I'm like, can't. We got to get going. Got lots to do today. So I'm stoked about this this event though, because it's at Caesar's Palace.
Yeah.
And should be pretty good size. They have 9 lecture tracks.
Yeah, a lot of really talented people there. Holy crap. I don't know how you got them all in there. I mean, that's amazing.
This could be the biggest lineup we ever had, between Flaggett, Raleigh Panish, Rob Apudi, Randy McGinn, Ben Rabinowitz, all the great trial consultants like yourself, Sari De La Motte, Harry Plotkin, David Ball, Eric Oliver.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be pretty stoked about it all. And then besides the 9 lecture tracks, there's 20 different workshop tracks where it's small group training on your feet stuff. And you're going to be doing both some lectures and workshops. So why don't you tell us about the workshops you're going to be teaching first?
Certainly. The victim to victor workshops, I think we said we've got them slotted for 3 hours. They're going to be working with me. So it really is everything that I just described in the Lloyd Bell workshop and maximizing damages, discovering, delivering, and telling the victor story of your client is going to be the primary focus of these workshops. And so, yeah, we're going to be they're going to get an appetizer, a taste of working with the mask, and then being able to find the best way to tell the client's story, perhaps without any single words at all. Imagine that. And then when you work in that space and then you add the words, everything we say on the surface becomes infinitely more compelling. So a big part of the work that we're doing is focusing on, I feel like, an area that I think a lot of people understand but don't really apply, and it's called emotional state management. I know you talk about this, and it's an important thing. It's not as important as the words are, it's what's behind the words, in my humble opinion, that is even more powerful. And if you get yourself to that place, I call it state before story, emotional state before story. If you can get yourself to that place, and the skills and the words and everything that you need to say on top of that becomes infinitely more compelling to your listener. So that's the focus of the workshop. And then that coincides with we're calling it a lecture, the talk, the presentation.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's the clearest definition that most people understand, the lecture. So if
How
yours
about
is some kind of hybrid of a lecture.
It's a bigger conversation. How about that? Yeah. But don't be, this is not sitting on your asses and warming your seats time. I'm going to get people on their feet. Be prepared to have it be an interactive presentation where I might have some big group work in order for them to understand and not intellectualize the process, and to walk out with something more than just, head knowledge and move on. So yeah, I'm going to bring some theater into the work.
Looking forward to it. Just so everybody knows, in case they can't see your lecture. But everything that we do is recorded, and it's on Trial Lawyers University On Demand, which is an app for the phone. And we also collect all the pleas, transcripts, PowerPoints for all the various webinars that we do. We've done over 370 of them. So that way people can,
Mel,
can watch it anytime.
Yeah. And Dan, to that, I have to say, it reminds me of a workshop that I did recently. And it was a workshop webinar, about a 2-hour workshop webinar. This was not for lawyers. It was actually one of the maybe 1 or 2% of things that I do outside the legal world. But it was a 2-hour workshop on communication and presentation on Zoom, and they were all blind. Yeah. So you don't have to see it to do the work.
That sounds challenging, I'll say.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble picturing it, but I'm assuming it happened.
Blind people got to communicate. Blind people got to present. So, yeah. Anyway, I was supporting your statement when you said just because you can't see it, you can still learn a lot of stuff from it. So you don't have to. Yeah.
See, I missed the segue. It was too subtle. I was slightly confused there, but thanks for clarifying.
I didn't make it clear enough. On my fault, the communication specialist guy. I didn't make that crystal clear. That was the segue. Yeah.
That was the segue. All right. And we have you are going to be guest hosting some webinars coming up with some trial lawyers who you helped some way, shape, or form get some results in the courtroom. And on August 2nd, we got Tim Garvey and Sean Dormer. What's Sean's last name?
Sean Dormer.
Sean Dormer.
Yeah. 2 great attorneys out of not too far from me, out of Denver.
And so what's that case about?
So I'm big on titles. The title that Tim came up with the webinar, Tim and Sean came up with the webinar, was Trusting the Truth. And I'm looking at the title. I'm just want to make sure I'm getting it. How embracing the victim to victor approach turned an $80,000 offer and a $2.5 million post-trial settlement. They did a phenomenal job. And it's the story of a father. His name is Joe, and his life completely was turned around when he was rammed from behind by this inattentive driver who caused this 5-car pileup in a highway construction zone. And we're going to break down the case. And I think that the biggest takeaway that people will get from this is, we talk about what's the difference between embracing what I call the suck. These are the bias issues. And of course, the biggest bias issue is really you, the lawyer, but the landmine issues and embracing them versus talking about it. What's the difference between embrace and talk about it? Embrace is where you lean in, you get in front of it. You don't just, tiptoe around it. You embrace it, you make it front and center. And that's what these guys did. And I think the biggest landmine issue was, and Joe, the client, fell into probably the less than 1% of witnesses who don't come across as victim. He was a victor in every sense of the word, pretty much from the get-go. So it didn't have to do much work in terms of turning him around, but it really had to do taking the victim to victor approach and applying it to telling his story of strength that helped undermine their biggest attack issues, which is the guy was fine afterwards. And in fact, he went back to work afterwards and he got an even better job afterwards. And there were a lot of other landmine issues that had they not been fully embraced, I think could have really, really hurt them. So that is in a nutshell what we'll be talking about.
All right. And then on August 16th, you got Randy Rozek. So tell us about that case and how you helped.
Yeah, I love Randy. So we, again, I'm looking at the title here now. Again, I love titles. And so the title for this one, we're calling it The Bet. The Bet. Okay. So applying the victim to victim method against Children's Hospital, $8.3 million verdict. And the reason why we call it The Bet, Randy owes me a dinner to this day because he said, there's no way in hell you're going to make this client likable. No way in hell. Jesse, no way. Good luck. And
what happened to the client?
Yeah,
what's the story?
About the story. Yeah. So we're calling her Nicole for legalities. She was violently attacked. This is a mother of 2 children. She was violently attacked in the waiting room of a children's hospital clinic, a diabetes clinic. And the attacker was a 16-year-old with a long history, Dan, of violence. Inflicted severe injuries on Nicole just like out of the blue. And beat the crap out of her, literally, inside this hospital waiting area, and causing Nicole severe traumatic stress and brain injury. And Nicole's husband, and I'm just looking at the facts of, who he witnessed the attack. He was deeply traumatized, and he had to take on this caretaking role for her. And so they had known about this person, they being the hospital. Security had previously agreed with the attacker's mother that the assailant would not be present at the clinic. They knew about all this stuff, but the agreement wasn't enforced. And as a result, this is what happens. And so the case is we brought it against the Children's Hospital for negligent security. And we helped tell the story of this escalating pattern of violent behavior that had been building up, and then they let this happen. So we come back to the bet, because I don't know if you've ever had a chance to experience the best witnesses becoming the worst and the worst becoming the best, but that's what it was for her. She found her strength, and she was a victor in every sense of the word. And I think that was a game changer for the jurors, to be able to see her defining herself by her strength, because she fell so easily into the sympathy trap. I mean, the victim trap. Oh my Lord. It was a shit show. And then we turned it around.
That trial took place in Wisconsin?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Randy's out of Wisconsin. That's right. Yeah.
See, Randy signed up for TLU Vegas. When I looked up his bio, I saw that he had some big results, and I was talking to him about it. Then he mentioned your name. I said, how about that? What a small world.
Small world.
You're going to be reunited with your buddy Jesse in Vegas in October.
Randy's a rock star, man. I'm glad that you're getting to meet him, and he's a part of the community. He's fantastic.
What's
and maybe he'll buy me dinner in Vegas, because he owes me.
Maybe.
He said, what's the bet? And I said, buy me dinner, dude. And so he calls me up the day he gets that verdict, and he said, you won, fucker. So Yeah. All right. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a
Actually, the
great feeling when you
expletives
help
are mine.
people.
I think you just said you want. I added the fucker part. But yeah,
Yep, that's a good feeling to help people find justice.
it
I have to
is.
say,
It is.
to be the guide in some way, shape, or another. It's because Randy's never been to TLU before, and I'm like, "You've never been to TLU before?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Why the fuck not? Where you been? I've been doing this. We've been doing this for 3 years." He's like, "I don't know, man, but I'm like, at least you found your way out of the darkness of the wilderness now." He's like, "I did." I'm like, "Don't. It's not too late. It's never too late to take that first step." So, and then you got a third.
But
Well, go ahead.
sorry, just as a quick aside, what you just said, and I don't want to overlook it. It does feel good to help somebody find justice, because justice for me is healing. It's a word that you don't really talk about or really as fully as embraced as it should, in my opinion. But it is healing work, and that missing piece that I was looking for when I finally decided that this was the calling, this profession, this was the art that I was looking for, is that I never, as healing as the work that I was doing before, I never felt that feeling that I feel now, which is, what does it feel like to give somebody justice, the beginning of justice? And that is such an intoxicating feeling in a good way that you want more and more of. And it does feel good, because this woman was deeply, deeply broken on the inside. On the outside, you would never know it. And so this work, being able to be heard and to be seen by the jurors, was meaningful for her. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digress. The third one.
John Carpenter, September 10th. John Carpenter,
Yeah.
we go way back.
Yeah.
Way back, because I moved to California in 2012, I think, because I was buddies with Nick Rowley from the Trial Lawyers College. We were roommates. And back in 2005, and he invited me to come out and try a case with him. And I think he joined Carpenter and Zuckerman probably a couple years after that. And so we remained friends, and then he had a trial, and I went out and did it with him, and it was part of that. That's how I got to know John a little bit more. So
that's great. Yeah, John.
Big circle.
That's
big circle.
Big circle, and it's coming back home. It's very, very cool. Yeah, John was one of the first. Yeah,
and I know you're friends with Nick.
I am,
because you told me the story of how he picked you up. How'd you meet Nick? Tell us that story.
I owe Nick so much gratitude for he's really a major door opener for my career, along with my buddy Mel Orchard. I met Nick Rowley at Trial Lawyers College, and I was invited to teach grad one. And I obviously did not do my homework well enough to learn about who Nick Rowley was. I was a fledgling, in my defense, to the legal world. I was just getting my feet wet as a consultant. In fact, I don't know if I'd even made the full-time leap yet into doing this work full-time. So anyway, I knew about Trial Lawyers College.
Give us perspective. What year are we talking?
I knew
there's
you
a
were
lot
gonna
of
do that. My numbers are so bad.
Approximately. Nobody's here to fact check you. This isn't like a
I want to
presidential
say
debate.
maybe about 10 or 12 to maybe 15 years ago, maybe less. I mean, no, not 15 years, because that would not have been 15 years ago. So maybe 10 years ago.
Sounds about
I'm
right.
really bad at math. Let's just say it was maybe about 10 years ago, and we'll call it a day. Anyway, this kid picks me up at the, I get a text and say, "Hey, it's Nick. I'm going to be picking you up." I don't know who Nick is. And this is in Riverton, Wyoming. And I see this kid standing out there who looks, my immediate thought was, oh, this is the intern. This is like an intern from, because he looks young and green, and, and I'd heard that about a lot of people describing Nick Rowley when you first meet him, because he just looked so young and juvenile and really sweet guy. And then we start talking, and then I learn about him, and holy shit, and he's this lawyer, and we start just getting to know each other. And I tell him about the work that I'm doing in prison. And I said, well, a lot of the work that I was doing in prison is what I'm going to be doing at TLC. And he said, dude, you got to come out to my program. And he was running this program called, in Beverly Hills at the time, called Trial Ops. I think that was the name of it when he was out there. And
I remember that.
Remember that?
In the garage at CZR.
Yeah. So I did a full day seminar after TLC, and that boom. I mean, that really opened up the door for me. And that's where I met John Carpenter for the first time. And and John and I have been working together ever since then. So I owe so much of that to Nick. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, well, I wouldn't be sitting here at this condo I got in Vegas right now, but for the fact that Nick invited me to come watch him speak back in 2012, because it was my 45th birthday in Los Angeles, in Vegas, right here.
Yeah.
Over Labor, during Cala, over Labor Day, it's coming up. And I just, but had it not being there, I would have never met all these lawyers in California and gotten like the big idea, like I got to move to California to do this personal injury stuff, because this criminal law stuff is real hard and don't pay us very well. And these people look like they make a lot of money. So I didn't know how hard it was to become a personal injury lawyer back then, or first passing even how hard it was to pass the bar. I mean, that was 4 bar exams later, I finally passed. And then it was another 2 years.
Is that right?
2 years more to finish the licensing process with their moral character and all this. I never did all the background stuff because I figured I'd probably never pass the bar. So why waste my time doing all the background shit? Well, then when I finally passed, I still remember like after 4 tries, because you never, you fail that many times. You start to think, perhaps people are like, what are you going to do if you fail again? I'm like, I'm going to take it again. Like, how many times are you going to take it? I'm like, as many as it takes. I'm not quitting.
Takes,
so
baby. Yeah.
as many as it takes. I just building my mental toughness. And so, but for Nick, I never quite really became the full-time personal injury lawyer that I had set out to be. But this is what happens when you have, you just keep walking.
Pretty cool, man.
Not sure what the path is, but you keep walking on the right path and find your way. And just like you found your way at the witness prep,
well said.
Kind of found my way, my organizational skills, and somewhat people are like, wow, you must deal with a lot of egos. I'm like, there's a few of them here, but the vast majority of the people I deal with are really, they're difficult. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to get a description from Brian Panish of a lecture. Ambrose, I'm busy. I'm trying cases. I'm like, I understand, Panish, but you got to write it sometime. And so you write it.
When I made
I'm going to stop bothering you.
When I made the transition into working in the legal arena, somebody who also had a theater background said to me, Jesse, you're going to find that there's more egos in the legal profession than in the acting world. And I said, no way. No way is that possible. Absolutely not. No way. More than actors and directors. Are you kidding me? He was right. He was 100% right. So yeah, you got to work through them.
You got to work through them. Got to embrace them, right? What you say, the second part, you got to embrace the stuff.
You got to embrace.
I embrace it because I'm like, that doesn't bother me. I just keep working at it, being nice. Come on, help me out. Help out the community. You're going to get there. And I know, and everybody comes through, and it all comes together. To me, I'm always amazed it all comes together.
And I don't have an ego. No, I'm not one of them, but we all have it. We're all cut out of the same painful quilt. It's how we work with it. It's how we temper it that defines our character, because we all have an ego. Some are just maybe a little bit more harder to maintain or manage than others, but we all got it. So yeah,
it's the universal need to feel important.
Yeah,
that's why it helps to remember people's names, because a little tiny thing helps them. It really helps the relationship.
One of Maslow's top ones is the need to be important. Yeah, you bet. You bet.
So let's talk about John Carpenter and.
Well, actually, that was a perfect segue in Carpenter. The reference, I wasn't even thinking about that, but the reference to Maslow and the hierarchy, and John used a lot of that in trial. Actually, we're going to be talking a lot about that, of how the need to be important and Maslow's hierarchy played a role. But let's talk about the third one. So yeah, so our title for this one. You ready?
Love the titles. I've never.
Yeah.
Every time people send me descriptions, because somebody's got a verdict, I'm like, hey, you want to break it down and teach on it? I'm like, sure.
Tell a fucking story, man.
They never put a title on it. I'm like, what's the title? And it's always like, boy, $30 million ruptured disc verdict. But you see, now we're going to come up better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to do as a consultant? I'm going to send you the write-ups, and then I'm like, Jesse, come up with a title for this story.
I'd love to. Because
there you go. That way it'll make it more interesting for people. Like, okay, we got a story.
This is for our listeners. You guys, maybe you're already doing it, but if you haven't, do it. When you're running a focus group, ask your jurors if what you saw tonight had a title. If it were a movie, if it were a play, give me the title. You end up getting some really, really great stuff. Wordsmithing that you can use in your opening. Hell, you frame your entire. There's good stuff in there, but it makes you makes you think about your scenes. Every scene should have a title in your mind. So our title for this one is The Boy No One Knew. The Boy No One Knew. Framing the case with a phrase that John penned and still eludes me, although a lot less today. He calls it truth, love, and justice. Truth, love, justice. So framing the case with truth, love, justice plus victim to victor equals 60 million TBI verdict. It's a case I'm really, really proud of, because it is not to do one of these things, but it is, I'm going to do it. It's the culminating part of our work together. I don't know, who knows what the outcome would have been, but I think if John and I had done this case maybe, well, when we first started working together, it would have come out a lot differently. We wouldn't have embraced the suck as much as we did together because of the trust and the work that we've gained in our process together. But nevertheless, what happened? So a 15-year-old kid named Doyle, his life was completely destroyed pretty much when really a car ride turned into a nightmare. What happened was while he was traveling on the freeway, Doyle, the plaintiff's stepbrother, was at the wheel, and he rear ends this massive tractor trailer truck. His brother rear ends his so. That was a separate issue, but the violent impact that caused the side of the truck to collide with Doyle, the boy, we kept calling him the boy, resulted in a fractured skull and a severe traumatic brain injury. I mean, basically the kid is a vegetable. And so it really became, my work primarily was about the damages of that. It's really leaning into the suck on that when it's like, okay, what is money going to do? What is money going to do for a kid who's basically a freaking vegetable? Forgetting about liability, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to break that down in the webinar, and it's going to be really, really cool on orchestrating that, or how we're orchestrating that part of it. But focusing on Doyle, that was the question. It's like, what is money going to do? And so we found a way of, through the lens of the victim to victor plus truth, love, and justice, it's like, how are they not? And Joe Fried says this, and sorry if I'm getting a little muddy here. I love how Joe Fried says, I think it was Joe. I'm going to quote Joe. I'm just going to assume it's Joe because that's where I heard it from. But how can they, the defense, be right and we still win? How can they be right and we still win? Well, what if you took that even further? How are they right? How are they right? Now, how could they be right, but how are they right? And so we took that, and that really became the foundational approach to getting that verdict. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that, the boy that no one knew. And the reason why we call it the boy that no one knew, Dan, is because nobody could tell his story. There's nobody to speak for him. There's no way that we would even understand who he was before, just maybe through some pictures. And that was exactly the point. Yeah.
So in this case, I assume you did prep work with the family to tell this boy's story?
No. It was the approach of the victim to victor that allowed us to be able to tell his story. But actually, that's not entirely true. The person who could best help tell his story, the victim to victor approach, came not through through Doyle, the witness, or because although he was brought into the courtroom, but for the nurse who works with him, who managed to get Doyle to be able to smile, to lift his head. And that was the victim to victor approach that we took. But it really had to do with the concept of victim to victor and weaving it into the narrative by how are we choosing to look at Doyle? Because Doyle is there. Look at what he's able to do despite, and what is that thing that he's able to do? He's able to lift his head and he's able to smile. And the nurses are hopeful that he'll continue to be able to do a lot more of that. What is that worth? You're going to believe that this is worth absolutely nothing. This is nothing that's going to help Doyle, and you get to say something about that, or you're going to believe that it's worth a lot for a boy that nobody knew. And they came up with $60 million worth of reasons for why they believed that Doyle's life was worth a lot.
Let me ask you, because if somebody wanted some insights or help or is considering having you consult, because one of the things I'm doing in Vegas, because, there's a lot of great trial consultants out there that are helping people at different challenges in their cases. Because at TLU, obviously you're going to be speaking, but David Ball is going to be speaking via Zoom because he doesn't travel anywhere or go around people. But that's
Really?
okay, though. He's the only one.
Hoping to be with him in person, man. Damn it. Okay, but at least, all right.
Anyways, but like, Jessica Brilo out of Colorado.
Yeah, okay.
And
I've never met her, but I know of her, sure, yeah.
Oh, well, she's in Colorado.
Great.
She's great. She's been coming the last few years. Eric Oliver.
Yeah.
John Campbell and Alicia Campbell with Big Data.
Yeah.
Philip Miller.
I read their book, and in fact, I gave a glowing review for John for Jury Ball, which everybody should get their hands on. It's fantastic.
See, there it is right here.
Great stuff. I
co-author.
work with John on so many cases I work on. It's like, if I'd say, who's doing all the juries? John Campbell, great. Boom. You guys are in great hands. He is fantastic.
Well, and then, and then Sari De Lamont.
Bloody sorry. Yes.
So we have all these different variety of trial consultants, trial coaches, whatever you want to call them, coming out and presenting so that people can compare and contrast, because most people, I think, know the value of having a consultant that you mesh well with. And so people will be able to really get to check it out.
And leave the rest would be my advice to everybody. Take what you like and leave. You're going to get nuggets and gold. But let me be this, and I say this, and I hopefully I'm not stepping on anybody's toes here. And this goes for people who aren't just trial consultants. Anybody listening, if you hear anybody say this is the way to do it, if you hear anybody speaking in absolutes, run for the door. Okay? Because I subscribe to the Bruce Lee method of trial advocacy, which is be like water, my friend. You find what works for you. Yes, right. And so empty your cup, go there to learn, because you're going to get nuggets, man. You're going to hopefully more than nuggets. You're going to get
mouthfuls. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
People's like, I love when people
nuggets.
Get like Sean Claggett's partner, Jordan Logan. He's like always he's like, I hate TLU because there's so many great things to see that I can't see them all. And I get irritated. I suffer from FOMO. I'm like, isn't that better than like just getting one choice, stuff that you're not interested in, and you're in the back of the room surfing your laptop or answering text messages? I said, and I record it all, so that way, whatever you missed, and I just hired an AI company to build a tool to transcribe all of the content, all the webinars, and I've done like probably 6 multi-track conferences that have all been recorded that are all on there, because when they're all transcribed and indexed, they're going to be very searchable. And so it's really going to be a useful library for trial. I think I'm renaming it the Bible for trial, but I'm not quite sure with, with merging religion and politics and law. I kind of like the metaphor, the Bible for trial. So is this a Bible? Anyway, so looking forward to that. Now the reptile, see, it's funny you talk about the one way, because when I had David on, or I was talking to him, he's like, I used to make a mistake when I was younger, thinking that you had to do it one way. If you didn't do it this way, you're messing it up. But he's like, I've rethought that now, and now I realize that there are so many different wonderful lawyers doing it different ways and ways that work for them, and that's
good for David.
Really, the whole key.
That. Good for David for saying that, because I can imagine how difficult that would be to be able to make that shift when you're starting off and you're the only person who's doing this thing. I mean, the guys should be put in a Smithsonian. I mean, it's that's terrific that he says that.
And interesting enough, his first client ever was a good old boy out of Kentucky named Gary Johnson, who
I worked with Gary,
who was
team.
All right.
Yeah.
So Gary, I just got to know him. Some of his lawyers are coming out. Angie, I can't remember the last name, but because Gary was going to come out to Vegas, but he's got a trial. So if his trial settles, he's coming to Vegas, but he'll be in Huntington Beach next year, because we did about a month ago, we finished our Huntington Beach event, and we bought out this entire hotel on the ocean, the Pasea, and there was like 600 people there. It was awesome having the entire hotel. Not quite there for Caesar's Palace yet. We're not quite big enough we could get the whole hotel, but we're hoping by 2028.
Get there, man.
Whatever hotel we're doing in Vegas, it'll be just 3,000 rooms. That would be crazy. That'd be a.
You're
But
in the garden.
I just got to.
It's exciting to watch. It's cool.
I got to keep improving it because last night I'm at this conference and I'm like, how many black lawyers in America? They're like 67,000. I'm like, how many here? They're like 1,500. I'm like, where's the rest of them? Like, we don't know. I'm like, we got to make it better. We got to get them here. Like, we know we got to get everybody here. So I figure I have a lot of room for growth. There's got to be a few 100,000 lawyers in America. I'm like, where are they? How come that at TLU? Although we only had plaintiff's lawyers and criminal defense lawyers. So we don't have that big a group because there's all kinds of lawyers at the NBA.
Build it and they will come, Dan. And you're building.
That's my general philosophy and belief. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But so far, so good. Besides, in Vegas, besides like the great education, which we have great education, but you're going to meet so many new people and make so many friends because I ask everybody that's coming, whether you're, an attendee, a speaker, or even a vendor, to write their story of who they are. I call it a personal bio in the first person, stuff that doesn't have to do with the law. Like, I'm the youngest of 8 kids. I went to all boys Catholic schools my whole life until I went to the University of Michigan. I went to night school at Detroit College of Law. So things that are personal, like I failed the California bar 3 times, that you wouldn't put in your professional bio, but anybody that's ever failed the bar exam knows that feeling of loneliness, loserish, whatever you want to say, or if you grew up in a big family, that's one experience. You went to night school, that's another experience. So finding those experiences that we wouldn't know unless we talked, and so that helps kind of bring people together.
I like.
And then with the workshops that we're doing, like the workshops you're doing, whoever signs up for them, you have to do 2 Zoom meetups with your group ahead of time, so you can orientate people what they're going to be doing. They walk in and they're more comfortable because they've all met each other on Zoom already. And then I have, I disperse the personal bios to the small group. So you're just reading everybody's bios and kind of getting to know people in that group before you show up to the conference, because then you get rid of that initial uneasiness, at least with the people you see, because you recognize them, like, hey, Jesse, what's up? And then, it's a better vibe all the way around when you have people getting connected. Plus, I want people to become friends because this is a lonely world and we all need more friends. And the day before, October 16th, Sean Claggett's hosting 144 of his closest friends, taking them out to Bali High for a golf outing. And then Nick Raleigh, he's hosted a group of people and taking them out to Red Rock Canyons to do a little yoga and hiking. And then my buddy, Kurt Zader from Denver?
Yes. I don't know if I've met him. I feel bad.
Well, you will.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's all into, he's teaching quite a bit here in Vegas, but he's going to host a group of people. I just talked to him yesterday, and he's like, I'm not sure. I want to take people on an adventure. So he's thinking I'm going to go, ATV rentals. Whoever wants to go, get like 30 people, go out and buzz around the desert ATV. I'm like, you know what? That sounds like fun. It's like whatever, these different little excursions on the day before. And then on Wednesday the 16th, we have I call it a registration party, because I hate waiting in line for registration. It's boring. But if we have a party and there's never a line, because if there's a line, you can just get a drink and hang out and chit chat, meet people. And then if there's no line, then you can go check in. Still point in fighting the line. Lines happen. So, and then every night at Vegas, besides, the great education, we have theme parties every night. I like theme parties. The first Thursday night, we have an 80s party. I got this great band called Mojo Juju playing. I've seen them play here in Vegas. And then Friday night is a Halloween party, because it's a week. Usually this is 1 week earlier than we normally done, because sometimes you just have to work. You have to work with the schedule of the hotels when they have space available. And then, but on the Halloween party, though, we're going to have live band karaoke, which I'm really excited about, because people get to be rock stars. And yours truly is, Mr. Karaoke. I love karaoke. People are like, you have a terrible voice. I'm like, I'm not letting that stop me. If I had a great voice, then I should be a singer.
Yeah.
But I'm a lawyer.
Hear your great voice. They want to hear the struggle to find your great voice.
The struggle to find the voice. That's right.
Struggle. That's the work. That's what it's about. That's what you're selling. It's not about your voice. Yeah. Boy, did I learn that recently. That reminds me, I was on a cruise not too long ago, and they had karaoke, and I thought I prided myself on being a pretty good singer. And I went up there and I sang, and it was backed up by a live band, and I sang Tom Petty's "Free Fallin'." And I thought I could hit that high note. I crashed and burned. I hit the wall. And I have so much respect, because I'm free. You got to go into, I couldn't do it. And it was so painful. I went free, and you literally saw the room kind of go like that. But yeah, so I have respect for that.
For the karaoke years. And then Saturday night's going to be a very casual beach party theme, because
Okay.
I have to get people fired up for that next conference, which is going to be in Huntington Beach after that. See, I got 8 months to plan that one. That I'm looking forward to. Nice. That one will be mostly planned before October, because that one is be a little bigger next year. I got some new people coming. So I'm really excited about that. One of the best things about my whole job I get to meet so many great lawyers that I've never met before.
Totally.
And
yeah,
and to learn really about them, like these 3 webinars you do. I don't know. I know those people, some of those people a little bit, met them before, talked to them on the phone, but never really got to see what kind of lawyers they are and how they figure this shit out. So that's kind of the fun part of my job is the people I get to meet and the fun things. Like before this conference, I was up in Montreal for another conference with another different group of lawyers. So it's just one big social outing. I tell you, so
pretty
lucky.
Cool, man. It's pretty cool.
So lucky.
Pretty cool. And I'm honored
here's my
play my part.
All right. Well, here's my last question for you. Ready, Jesse? What is your, I guess, since you decided to become a trial consultant, trial coach, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment, your proudest moment, your greatest breakthrough? What would you say it is?
When it comes to working in trial?
When it comes to what you're doing, what you get to pick?
Well, nothing compares to being a father, but I didn't know
Oh no, this is professional. We're not talking the human side.
Good. All right.
You don't have to mention getting married. No. We're just talking professionally.
I will tell you one of the proudest moments for me, and I'll probably be talking about this story in the presentation. Has to do. Well, I'll give it away here. Has to do on a case that I worked on a number of years ago with a very talented lawyer named Eric Penn, and which resulted in a $90 million verdict, although it should have been way more than that. And it was against a trucking company, and the family of 4 were in this white truck, and the smallest, the youngest son of Jennifer Blake, he died, and then Brianna Blake was the one who they all were injured, but she had the biggest extent of injuries, and catastrophic. They didn't think that she'd ever come out of a coma. She did. She only knew how to sign, and she could only communicate with her mother through sign language. And she learned how to sign actually before she got injured because her grandmother was deaf. And so she did the American Sign Language. And so I got to work with Brianna and got to help tell her story. And it was the most inspiring story. And I'm always inspired by the people that I work with. But to me, I look at it as maybe the greatest example of victim to victor in all the witnesses that I've worked with. And it's one that you can find and should find in every one of your clients' stories, no matter what it is. And so briefly, I remember working with her, and she was really excited about sharing with me something. We were talking, and then I left the room, and then she started banging. She's got basically like this metal cage that's wrapped around her body that can only kind of fit her. It's built for her contorted body. And she starts rapping on this metal cage, and bam, 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 bam. And we run into the room, and she says to her mom, vigorously, play him the tape, play him the tape, play him the tape. And her mom is like, Bree, take it easy. Relax. Okay, I'll play him the tape. But Bree was hell-bent on having me watch this tape. And she pops in the tape, and it's basically a reel, Dan, a highlight of everything that Bree used to do before she was injured. She was a theater geek. Reminds me a lot of kids that I used to work with when I was a teacher. She was, in this video, she's performing on stage. She's doing twirls. She's doing gymnastics, and she's singing on stage. She loved Taylor Swift. So it's a real highlight of all these scenes that her mom had recorded before she got hurt. And it was compiled into this video. But as we're watching this video, I can't help but look at Bree and the way that she's watching herself. And she has this kind of beaming smile on her face. And I couldn't help but ask. And I asked her, I said, Bree, some people, including myself, might find it difficult to be able to look at pictures and videos of what they used to do. But it's like you look at it and it motivates you. It seems like it inspires you. And then Bree says to me, Dan, the most powerful words that I've ever heard it come out of a witness's mouth, that the jurors ultimately got to hear. She says to me with that question, when I say, how do you do it? I mean, you look at it, you look at this as an inspiration. She says to me, that's still me. That's still me. So when she looks at herself, she's not seeing the crud. She's not seeing the broken body. She's not seeing the brain injury. She's not seeing she doesn't define herself by her brokenness. She defines herself by her strength. And so those words, that's still me, is probably the most proudest moment that I've ever got to experience and witness as a witness guy. And that moment really helped define for me. It's not that I wasn't taking the victim to victor approach before that, but it really crystallized to me just how important it really, really is from that moment. So that would probably be my top proud moment. There's many of them, but that's tough.
Well, it's a good thing I asked. So Jesse, let me ask you this last question here before we wrap up. Because I used to do a fair amount of witness prepping myself.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, before Trial Lawyers University, and the thing that I disliked the most about it was the emotional drain it was to like connect with people's stories of tragedy and to have to listen to them.
Yeah.
Basically internalize them.
Yeah.
And then, do your best to help the lawyer, and then sometimes it doesn't really go so well. And now and like I used to kind of feel personally responsible, even though I was just one little tiny piece. But if the trial didn't go well, it would just, I always feel like, wow, I'm a loser. I cannot do my job. But what do you think? What would you say is the hardest part of what you do? The most difficult part?
People ask me all the time, how do you do the work? How do you do? I mean, look, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor, but this work can be deeply therapeutic. And people ask me, how do you do it? You're in people's tragedies and pain all the time. And I would be a liar if I didn't say that sometimes it gets to me, especially when it deals with kids, of course. How could it not? But I walk away with a very different feeling. I don't walk away feeling the loss. I walk away feeling inspired. And I tell people this right at the get-go, witnesses. It's easy for me to say, but when I'm talking to you, I'm not looking at your pain. I'm trying not to look at you or judge you by your pain. I'm looking at you by your strength. And the reason why I know that who you are, even if you may not know it, is because you're here. And that inspires the shit out of me, Dan. That keeps me up at night with inspiration to know that there are people out there who are able to do that. If I didn't have that feeling, I think I would have imploded. I don't think I would be able to take on the pain that I see. But it's that shift. It's that shift that allows me to be able to not feel the weight of the work, but the lightness of the work.
So for folks who might want to get in touch with you prior to October 16th in Vegas, how do they go about doing that? What's the best way?
Super easy. Jesse at tellthewinningstory.com is my email. I won't give out my number, but I'm easy to reach. Tellthewinningstory.com is my website. But shoot me an email and let's start a conversation.
So everybody can register for these webinars and for TLU Vegas, TLU Huntington Beach at triallawyeruniversity.com. My email, of course, is Dan at triallawyeruniversity.com. And my cell phone number is 248-808-3130, so if anybody needs me for anything or any questions about the event, I know sometimes the website's not the easiest thing to navigate when you have so many tracks, and it's a very highly technical website, but once you figure it out, then it's easy to use. But there's like so much to put on it. This is going to be my greatest masterpiece of my life. I got 90 days to finish building it. I'm glad you're going to be part of it. I hope everybody's listening shows up, because there's nothing like, I love conferences, and I love for the whole time I've been going to conferences for like more than 10 years. Like on a regular basis, when I used to this other program called Trojan Horse Method, I always used to go to every conference and be like, man, if I was in charge, I wouldn't do this, or I would do Y, or like, what the hell is that person doing on the stage, or like, why is this layout like this? I was always highly critical, and it was interesting because like it was a high, like the trial lawyers college. I remember last year I went there. I was with my buddy Jacob Norman. Jacob from the Trial by Human Group. He's like Nick's partner in trial lawyers for justice. But
every time I say and then somebody comes to me, hey man, it's me. I'm like, hey, I'm blanking out, but I'm Jacob. We've met. I apologize.
It was back in like 2012, 2013, and we're in Wyoming. It was 2014 and for a reunion, and I got frustrated with the trial lawyers college. I'm like, I just felt like, that it wasn't doing a very good job teaching people, and I was frustrated, and maybe it was because they never put me on staff. Thank God. I think how different my life would have been if it wouldn't have been, because you're at trial lawyers college, like, everybody wants to be on staff. You think it's like kind of status, right? And people get elevated for no particular reason. You see all these friends of yours like, oh, but you want to be like in the invited cool kids club too. And then when you're not, it hurts, especially after being there 12 years and people are like, oh, you teach? I'm like, no, I'm just a student. I'm just a persistent student. Like, how could it be? I'm like, very slow learner, obviously, after 12 years, but I'm persistent. But I was frustrated with some of the teachings there and some of the people there. And I was venting to Jacob. He's like, oh, if you think you're so smart, you should start your own program. And I'm like, okay, because at least you stop complaining, do something. I'm like, I remember that. Stop complaining and do something about it. If you think you're right and other people are wrong, well, and if that way if anybody comes and listens to you or follows you or teach whatever you're doing, if somebody participates, well, then you're giving them a different option. But if you just complain and don't do anything, well, it just adds to the noise. So, anyways, I don't know.
You're here, and that's your experience. So
this is it. This is it. It's the frustrations with the past. We try to improve the present, and this conference in Vegas, hopefully, it will be everything that I've come to this point in my life, as far as putting together people to share brilliant trial wisdom and have a great time and make a bunch of new friends. That's our goal. So great hanging out. Get to know you, Jesse. And
thanks for having me, Dan.
And I'll see you on that next, whatever that first date is that we just talked about in August for Tim and Sean.
Yep.
Webinar and before for prepping. So
you got it. Looking forward. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Ready to train with the Titans and set records with your verdicts? Register for our live conferences and boot camps at triallawyersusuniversity.com. Start getting your reps in before the big event by going to tluondemand.com to gain instant access to live lectures, case analysis, and skills training videos from the trial lawyer champions you love and respect, as well as pleadings, transcripts, PowerPoints, and notes for a roadmap to victory. Join the group that continues to get extraordinary results. Trial Lawyers University, produced and powered by LawPods.